Let's talk about the geometry import nodes inside Ventuz. To do that, we switch to a new scene and we simply change our layout here to the logic view that we have our editors here. So you can find the geometry import nodes under the toolbox in the geometry tab. Then we have here the geometry import live node. We have the geometry import node and we have the geometry renderer and the mesh loader. We will cover these 4 nodes in this tutorial. So let's start with the geometry import node. So if you simply drag and drop that here to your hierarchy editor, then you can see here all the properties of the geometry import node on the right side. If you have somewhere a 3D model, a scene or whatever, you simply click here on the asset on the 3 dots. Then Ventuz will open the file explorer and then you can navigate to your 3D model or scene, right? Down here you also can see which models are supported by Ventuz. Yeah, so all the standard file formats are there, yeah, like DAE, Collada, FBX, OBJs, and here our recently favorite one, the GLTF. Exactly. So, and then you simply navigate to wherever you have your 3D model on your computer, open it, and it will be loaded into that geometry input node, right? So this is one way. Another way is if you simply use here, let's say I have here a scene already, right? So let's say if we simply drag and drop here, for example, that's 03.gltf 3D model, if we simply drag and drop that here, right? So you can see down here now that we imported that model, right? Then Ventuz automatically will add scenes or will add the file structure. I will show you that in another model shortly. And of course, then you are able to adjust here all that settings of your model inside here, right? So let's do that now with another model. Let me open up that file explorer again. I have here a car scene, and here we simply drag and drop this scene GLTF file inside here. Ventuz will automatically import it, and as you can see here now, Ventuz will add access depending on the file structure of your 3D model, how you developed it or how you build it basically in Blender, in Houdini, in a Cinema 4D or whatever 3D tool you are using, right? So now let's see, we can, for example, delete. Once we imported that, we can also delete here that geometry import node. Let's keep this axis and let's delete this one and this one as well. And now we can adjust here a little bit our scaling, right, of that car scene. And now you can see here we have full access about this car scene, right? And of course here you also can see now, because that's a little bit more complex scene, that first sphere what I imported. So we have here now the car body as a separate hierarchy. We have the door left, the hood, rear bumpers, all that stuff. And down here we also have access here to that vintage lantern, right? So we also can block that or even move it if we want so, right? So I think this is pretty much the simplest way how you can import 3D models into Ventuz. Simply drag and drop it into your hierarchy and it's there. And of course from here you can then start to clean it up, change colors, or even merge it to container, right? That we have here then our car scene, right? Things like that. Then you maybe even can copy it and put 2 of that scenes beside each other, right? Things like that is all possible here, okay? So this is basically the geometry import node. Let's quickly go a little bit more into that properties of the geometry import node, right? So of course here you can define which model to load. If you want to import the cameras, if you want Ventuz create nodes, if you want to import cameras, import lights from your 3D scene, right? You can set up also the global scale here, right? Then you have here different properties for materials, right? If you want to import the materials or if you want to add the materials maybe later in Ventuz directly, you can invert things, you can turn off the lightnings, things like that. If you have textures in a subdirectory, you can add the path here. Then you can define different settings about the animations if your 3D scene has an animation, right? So you can say, I want to animate here our rig, I want to, or import our rig or the animation itself, how you want to import them, right? If you want to merge the animation in slices, or if you want to have it as a single animation node, then here you have access about the bounding box, right? The alignment of the bounding box, and here you have a couple of other options how to optimize that 3D import basically, right? And of course, down here, process, you also have some yeah, properties or access to adjust, for example, your normals right here, the normal smooth angle, or you can flip the normals, or even here you can flip the UV map, right? And things like that. Okay, that's our import geometry node, our geometry import node. Another, for all of you guys who are using Cinema 4D, there is also a geometry import live node. Yeah, I actually don't use Cinema 4D since years, but with that import live node, you basically can make a live link between Ventuz and Cinema 4D. That means with that live link, you simply have to install a plugin for Cinema 4D, which you also can find on the Ventuz website or even here in the installer. And once you did that, then you basically simply are able to connect here to your Cinema 4D instance. And then you have access directly to, or you will see basically directly the 3D model, which is opened in Cinema 4D. You can see directly here inside Ventuz. Yeah? And whenever you work in Cinema 4D and that model and the changes you are doing will also directly apply in real time here in our renderer. Okay, so maybe in the future they will add more yeah, tools. I don't know, maybe like Houdini or Blender, that it's also possible to get a live link to other 3D modeling tools, right? Okay, so let's delete that. Then we have here our geometry renderer and we have our mesh loader. Okay, so if I drag and drop our geometry renderer here, our geometry renderer wants to have a geometry. To get that geometry, we actually need a mesh loader. Yeah, so let's put that mesh loader here in our content, right? And as you can see here in that little icon, by default, Ventuz loads the 3D logo basically of Ventuz in that mesh loader by default. So now we simply have to take that geometry from our mesh loader and bring it here to our geo renderer. And now you can see already we have here our 3D model of the Ventuz logo. Let's bring an axis in front, make it a bit larger, scale it up. Let's rotate it a bit here and there. As you can see, this is a 3D model now. Okay, and of course here you can also work on and copy and yeah, animate the geometry you loaded in your mesh loader. As you can see here now, we have here two nodes. There's also another way you can do that. So let's delete this guys again. And let's bring in, for example, our geometry renderer, right? And if we check here now, so we can go here to our geometry property, right? And here we can say now, hey, please use the mesh loader. If we use that, we have exactly the same setup like before, with one little difference. We don't have the mesh loader outside here in the content editor, right? It's now nested basically inside this geometry or geo renderer, right? This is pretty much similar like I showed you in the axis node, right? So also here we can add a axis node, right? A transform. If we put here axis, then we also have a axis now here where we can do basically everything or basically the same like if we put an axis in front of here, right? So this is totally up to you. If you want to have that nodes basically exposed, right? Then you simply can say, okay, press this little button. And as you can see, this is now exactly the same setup like I did just before when I drag and drop the geometry renderer here and took here the geometry from here, right? So this is totally up to you how you want to do that. Exactly the same here with the axis. If you don't want to have it nested, then you simply press here this extract to hierarchy node, and then you have the access here in front, right? With all the settings you did. So this is a personal preference, whatever you like. For me personally, I like to add access in front that I really can see where I'm working on because, yeah, but again, this is really totally up to you.